Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ruining Your Childhood.
Welcome back to another episode of Ruining Your Childhood, one sculpt at a time. Today we're going to be sculpting something a little bit different, but also very same. Character we're going to be creating today is actually from a YouTube channel by the name of MeatCanyon. If you know, you know, and if you don't, you should check them out. But today we're going to be sculpting a character by the name of Melvin. To get this build going, we're going to go ahead and start off with a fat ball of clay. I'm going to use my dirty phalanges to form, mold, and fold until we get ourselves a nice little upside down heart. For the eyes, I went ahead and made some pre-baked balls using some callus colored clay. Once I was happy with the position of the eyes, we could go ahead and mash them into position. I take a few pieces of rolled out clay that I wrap around the bottom and upper part of the eye, making his eyelids. Then use a ball stylus to go ahead and smooth that into the rest of the face. I do add a little bit of texture, ends up getting covered up, but then I just go back and add it later. Now Melvin's got himself big old jowls, aka fat cheeks. So we're gonna go ahead and take some rolled out pieces of clay, applying those underneath his eyes, then using my fingers and a ball stylus, we're gonna go ahead and blend that all in. Blend it all in smooth like, you know what I'm saying, just like that. I'm sorry. Now we're gonna add a little ball of clay to where his mouth and chin is gonna be. It's kind of tucked in between his jowls. Once I get that all smoothed out, we're gonna go ahead and start adding his mouth first. I take a half circle silicone sculpting tool that I'm just gonna poke and prod into the lower part of his face to add his mouth. Going for like a,
oh my gosh, what's around the corner?
Face. For his nose, I took a small little ball of clay, then I'm using a ball stylus to go ahead and go around it, blending it in, but also shaping it into a little tiny button nose. I then take my smallest ball stylus, cramming it up into his nose to give him some nostrils, and then give the whole thing a good rub down with some isopropyl alcohol right before starting on his lips. For Melvin's lips, I went ahead and rolled out a nice thin piece of tapeworm before wrapping it around his face orifice and using a ball stylus to blend it all in. Once I was happy with the shape of Melvin's lips, we could go ahead and start adding some detail around his eyes using a silicone sculpting tool. I go ahead and add little wrinkles above and below his eyes, and also on the sides I add some little crow's feet, which I end up getting rid of later on, but they're there for now. For Melvin's ears, I went ahead and rolled out a ball of clay that I mashed flat with my thumb. After slicing that flat disc in half, I could apply those pieces to the side of the face, then using a ball stylus, we could go ahead and start blending those in. While I take the next few minutes working on detailing these ears, I just want to say thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. Hope you guys are enjoying the video so far. You should definitely leave a comment down below of who you guys would like me to sculpt next. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cartoon character, it can literally be from anything. Moving forward with this channel, I don't think I just want to stay limited to cartoons, I want to broaden my spectrum here a bit. So if you have any movie characters or video game characters or things from the 80s or 90s or 2000s or whenever that you just like me to sculpt and make it weird, I'm your guy. Now that we got his ears all done, we could go ahead and start texturing his face. I went ahead and stuck on some gloves for this process because it has a little bit of texture on the tip. Taking some Bacon Bond clay adhesive, we go ahead and just tap that on the surface to give his face a little bit more bumpy texture. Now that his face is all done being tapped and textured, we could go ahead and stick in the oven for his first bake. Now that Melvin's head is back and baked, we could go ahead and start working on his body. For Melvin's big back body, I go ahead and take a ball of clay that I roll out into a tube, flattening it out a little bit, then taking that head and mashing it into it. Now that his head's all mashed into his body, we could take the back side of an X-Acto knife, drawing a line around his torso to indicate the shirt and pants. Start by giving him some back detail by taking the back end of my X-Acto knife and drawing in some back rolls. Now Melvin's got a tucked in shirt, so we're gonna go ahead and add a piece of tapeworm to the bottom of the shirt to help bulk it out a little bit more. I then follow that up with some more silicone sculpting tools that I start drawing little lines up to help indicate some folds and wrinkles, adding more tapeworm as needed, blending that in until we got ourselves a nice little wrinkled shirt. As for Melvin's collar on his shirt, we just cut out a couple little triangles of clay. Then using my finger and a ball stylus, we kind of just push those into position, then blend those into the rest of the body. I did add a little place for where his buttons go on his shirt, but I end up covering up with the hands anyway, so I'm not going to go too much into detail on that. We give the whole shirt a once over with some isopropyl alcohol, and then we could start on his pants. I wanted it to look I wanted to make sure it looked like his shirt was actually tucked in, so we're going to add a little belt sticking out of the front. To achieve this look, I just used a couple of different silicone sculpting tools to carve in a belt. As for the wrinkles that go on the front of his pants, we're just going to roll out some thin pieces of tapeworm, sticking those onto the front. Then using a variety of different sculpting tools, we're going to go ahead and just blend those in, trying our best to make the illusion of wrinkles coming from his crotchal region. Then add a couple of divots on the side where his thighs are going to go, and then we can start adding some of the finer details, starting with his zipper. Using a silicone sculpting tool and a ball stylus, I just draw in a couple strategic lines of where that zipper flap goes, flip them around back to work on those back pockets, and add a couple more back flap details before sticking him in the oven for another bake. Now that Melvin's back and baked again, we could go ahead and start working on his arms. Off camera, I rolled out a decently thick tube of clay that we're going to slice in half, pinch off one end. We're going to go ahead and just apply that to the body, wrapping it around front, doing the same for both sides. Once I was happy with the placement of those, we could start blending those in, start adding wrinkles and details across his arm tubes. For this, I'd use the same tools that I've been using the whole time. And then once I was happy with the shape of that, we could go ahead and start adding his little cufflings, his little sleevelets. What are those called? Little end bits of your sleeves? I don't even know. For this, I just added 2 little discs of clay, then using a flat silicone sculpting tool, I work around adding little lines to it and give it a little bit more texture. Now for Melvin's hand, to avoid the risk of breaking off his fingers in the future, we're gonna go ahead and just make them pretty much flat to his chest, starting off with a ball of clay that I put into position. Some sculpting tools, I go ahead and just start adding fingers and details here and there, nothing too fancy with this.
If you're liking the video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
After a few minutes of just finagling with the hands, doing some minor sculpting here and there, we could go ahead and give those hands a rub down with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of those tool marks and finger marks. We could start on those thighs. As for Melvin's thunder thighs, we're just going to go ahead and rip off a nice dank nug of clay, applying that to the bottom of the body. Once we got that fastened to the body, we could take a silicone sculpting tool and start adding some of those wrinkles like we did to the crotchal region. Once I was happy with the amount of wrinkles, we could mirror the exact same thing on the other side, not neglecting the back side of the legs as well. And then we could start on his feet. Melvin's shoes are going to be pretty simple here. We're going to just start off with a ball of clay, then going to form into basically the same shape as of his head, applying that to the front part of the leg, blending that in with my fingers. And using a sculpting tool, we reintroduce the pant line. And to finish off the detailing on his shoes, I just used a wedge-shaped sculpting tool to draw on his heel. Now, I normally don't do this for his eyes, but I'm going to be adding his pupil separate. That way it kind of bulges out a little bit, gives it a little bit more depth. And with that, we can put it in the oven for its final bake. And now that we have Melvin back and baked to a perfect crispy perfection, we could start on the painting process. Now this begs the question, how do we make painting a character that is basically just gray and black interesting? I mean, I could sit here and tell you how it's important to glamorize every shade of gray that you're painting. How that the many nuances between each different tone of gray tells a different story. Warm gray, cool gray, mysteriously emotionally distressed gray that only texts you back at 2 a.m. Gosh. I could sit here and pretend like I handpick each shade with the delicate precision of a Michelin star chef planting a single microgreen. I mean, I could drone on about manipulating values, balancing contrast, building dimension, and how every brushstroke adds depth and life to an otherwise colorless void. But let's be real. This is just a fancy way of saying I'm gonna dry brush the hell out of this thing to make it look good. Now that we're done with our paint job and our spill, we could start adding his hair. For this, I went ahead and just clipped some of my wife's hair off while she was sleeping. To apply these little tufts of hair, I'm using this stuff called Fabric Fusion Fast Drying Fabric Adhesive. Actually, it worked really well. I used to use super glue, but I was sick and tired of my fingers getting stuck together, so no more of that. Now that we got Melvin's head all covered in hair, we could go ahead and give it a little bit of trim to give it that signature messy look. And with some last second surprise detailing and a little bit of assembly, we're on to those glamour shots. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and also leave a comment down below of who you would like to see me sculpt next. I'll see you next time.